Welcome to TMI Today with Rita Bocuzzi and Jen Lee. In this podcast, there is no such thing as too much information. We are diving into all of the taboo topics, from money and careers to relationships and parenting, to whatever else we've been too afraid to discuss as women. Listen in and join the movement as we raise each other up in our everyday lives.
Welcome to another episode of TMI, Today's Motivational Insights. I'm Rita Bocuzzi, also known as Mama Rita Money, and I am here with financial stress relief attorney extraordinaire, Jen Lee. She is one of my favorite attorneys ever because we're always learning together. And that's why we got together. TMI sounds like too much information, but I don't believe, and Jen does not believe, that we could ever have enough information when it comes to important resources like our guests share, like Kirsten Howe today, who's going to talk about with us and have a conversation about special needs planning and how the resources and how we tap into them and what's possible and how maybe we can create things to be better for people with special needs and their families to be empowered and flourish. So Jen, take it away.
Thank you, Rita. And Kirsten is one of my closest colleagues in the attorney world, and I really appreciate having her as a resource. And I also appreciate personally because I have a special needs child. And so when Rita and I were discussing topics for this, for TMI, I was like, we really need to talk about special needs and what happens when you didn't plan to have a kid with special needs, but now you do. And Kirsten is the expert at that. And so Kirsten, give us a little bit of your background on your firm and then what you do for special needs planning these days.
Okay. My firm is Absolute Trust Counsel, and we are located in Walnut Creek, California, which is in the United States. I'm sure you have an international audience. And we are at our core estate planners. So we help people with wills, trusts. We help people after a family member dies with a trust administration or a probate. And a component of our estate planning is special needs planning. So it's estate planning for families who have a special needs member.
Good.
That covers it.
That's helpful. So for special needs, talk a little bit about what special needs, like what do you need to plan for? What's the difference between planning for a special needs child versus someone else?
Yes, that is the big question. Right. And just as kind of like background on that or groundwork, special needs, that phrase covers a lot of territory, We could be talking about a young child who has some learning disabilities or even ADHD, something like that. And we don't know how they're going to turn out. It's way too early. So maybe we need to plan for now in a certain way that we might not otherwise plan. Or it could be someone, who is what we think of profoundly disabled from birth. And really what we're planning for in cases like that, where there's a child who we don't think is going to be able to be self-supporting, we are planning for the parents to replace themselves. That, at its core, that's what they are trying to plan for, which, is daunting. And
it's not a fun thing to think about.
No, exactly. It makes it very emotionally challenging because they just don't, it's hard to imagine and it hurts your heart to think about it. So, that's basically what it boils down to.
And I think, in that statement, as I look at it as insightful, it's having enough love to leave them with the legacy of love, knowing that they'll always be cared for. So rather than looking at the daunting aspect, to really tap into the love aspect of this. I think that's really so profoundly beautiful.
I think that's really important too. And Kirsten, if someone doesn't do this planning, then what happens then? What happens if someone doesn't?
Well, there are a few things that could be very problematic. One could be, part of the planning, when I say the parents have to plan to replace themselves, mostly that's going to involve coming up with money somehow. There are only three ways for someone to be cared for. There's the unpaid kindness of friends and family members, there's government benefits, and then there's the money that you've managed to accumulate somehow, but whether through savings, investment, or life insurance. So if you don't do that planning, you may end up in a situation where you pass away and your child really doesn't have adequate support. So that's one way it could go sideways. And then the other way is you don't do the planning, there's plenty of money, but now the child is inheriting this money, which could cause a loss of the government benefits upon which they depend. And we can usually fix situations like that, but Jen, you're an attorney too.
Yep.
It's so much easier and cheaper to plan ahead than to clean up the mess afterwards. So we don't want to see that happen.
So one of my questions is, doing the finances, and I'm always about being prepared versus being panicked, right? In any situation, so that we're always progressing and growing and moving forward. Is, you're talking about is if they pass away, but what happens if something happens? I'm a cancer survivor of 12 years. So what happens, and thank God I'm okay. But there are some, during that time, I could never have taken care of anyone else other than I was fighting for my life during treatment. What happens in those kind of cases?
Yeah, there's a lot of, prongs to this. You're planning for, multiple retirements. You're planning for your own retirement. You're planning for their retirement. You're planning for your own incapacity. You got to buy long-term care insurance, whatever it is you do to be ready. And you have this extra life that you also have to do those same things for. And it's going to be a much longer, most likely longer life, because your special needs child isn't retiring at age 65. You got to support them from whatever age it is. So,
how did you get into this, Kirsten? How'd you get started? What's your background? How did you get into this type of law?
I don't have a personal connection to it, but something about helping disabled people appeals to me, because I also work with a lot of elderly disabled clients on the Medi-Cal aspect of their planning. And so I don't know what it is.
Just calling is what it is that you answered.
Maybe it's a very underserved community in so many ways, the disabled community, and the tiny little thing that I can do, I'm happy to do. So.
And Kirsten, a lot of us, maybe people don't know this, but estate planning attorneys, a lot of them don't do the special needs planning that you do. So it is actually very specific planning. So not every estate planning attorney out there looks at these problems, right?
That is very true. And there are certain aspects of it that you have to be very conversant, certain legal things. The whole government benefits law is something that an estate planner, other estate planners would never have to learn. And, you go to law school, you learn estate planning, that takes a long time to get that expertise. And now you want to layer on another piece? No, so a lot of them don't. But yeah, it is. And that's why I say it's underserved. It's underserved in our world. There aren't enough special needs attorneys. There aren't enough people advocating for people with disabilities. They're in the legal world, we could have so many more people and they'd all have work to do.
Do you think that's a little bit of lack of awareness that this actually exists, that this is a practice area that people should be talking to you?
I think you're probably right. Yeah, I think that's probably true. And you're helping by having this show for sure. Because people will hear me say this. And I would love, the young attorneys out there, there's plenty of work. You just need to know where to find it.
And Kirsten's a fantastic mentor too. So she does a lot for the legal community. So can you talk really quick about government, like you sprung onto the government benefits part, but what exactly I think people overlook they don't know they can get benefits for certain things.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about the government benefits?
Yeah. And that's a whole,
So their
3-hour
podcast
show. That's a
Yes.
quagmire. But anyway, the basic government benefits that we tend to focus on with special needs is SSI, which is supplemental security income. It is not Social Security, although it's administered by the Social Security Administration. It's a cash benefit that disabled people of very low means can qualify for.
Okay.
And in California, the current monthly maximum is a little over $1,000 a month. So it's not a huge benefit, but it really makes a difference. And then the other one that's very important to many special needs families is Medi-Cal. So Medi-Cal is health insurance that is paid for by state and federal governments. And that oftentimes is linked to the SSI. If you get SSI, you get Medi-Cal, and that's really the prize, is oftentimes the Medi-Cal.
Yeah, I can see that. It's health insurance and health services are very expensive.
Yeah, well, based on what your experience is, you know darn well that having healthcare coverage is critical to all of us. So, yeah.
And then there's specific planning you can do around so that people still qualify for benefits, even though if they have resources. And I think that's what I would like people to realize is there's planning you can do to qualify for those things. So
that's right. So the planning tends to focus, let's say the typical parent, 2 parents and a disabled child. So the parents, if they're smart, they recognize that someday they will die. Most of us have to just, deal with that fact.
Yes.
And then they want there to be money to take care of their special needs child. Like I said, $1,000-ish a month. Where are you going to rent an apartment for $1,000 a month in anywhere? I don't know.
Anywhere.
I don't even know. So it's not enough. And so the parents, through planning, they're going to leave an inheritance of some sort. It might be their 401k, it might be their house, it might be the life insurance, a combination of things. And they don't want the child to lose that Medi-Cal, because that's could be millions of dollars over a lifetime, literally. So we create a special needs trust, which is a very specific vehicle. It's recognized in federal law, so that the parents, when they die, the inheritance goes into this special needs trust, and it doesn't count as a resource against the child. Remember, if the child has too many resources, they're not going to qualify for these benefits. So anything in the special needs trust is we don't even look at it. It doesn't count. And the trustee of that trust can use that money to enhance the life of that special needs child.
That's super powerful. I think people need to realize how powerful that is.
Oh yeah, it makes the difference between, living in poverty or, living with a cousin, living with a sibling,
right?
And having really no life. It's huge. It is really huge.
Well, I want to say thank you for bringing that to light, because that is so super powerful. And I know we were talking a little earlier, because for me, it's all about education. And, I know that the school systems, my daughter-in-law is a special needs teacher, right? So my thought was, oh, wow, the schools might have pamphlets or resources, but they don't really have that, because like you mentioned, Kirsten, they do what they do in their realm. But I want to put out there for any parent teacher organizations that want to know more about this, you should reach out to Kirsten, because I think it really is up to us. I think taking care of our family and our community, which what parent teacher organizations or PTAs represent, is having those resources to have someone like you share this information or ways they could access the resources would be so crucial, because it's happening more and more. It's getting more attention and more awareness, and the more that we do that, the more that we can help them, because what you just shared about that tool not being a resource where, I mean, if you can imagine living on $1,000 a month versus parents having an estate that could be, $5,000 a month for a child that doesn't get taken away from them, is phenomenally huge. I think that's super amazing. So I want to say thank you for that work that you're doing and teaching and mentoring, because it's so needed in today. And I was just also thinking about, wow, look at this career opportunity that most people might not have thought of. Great leadership model. And I'm going to still call it a calling, because giving this big a contribution, I know probably takes a lot more sacrifice on, like you said, the schooling and your part, but well worth it.
Yeah,
right?
it's very gratifying work. It is much more gratifying than just a plain vanilla estate plan. Those are important.
Yeah.
And I love all my clients equally, but the sigh of relief that the parents of special needs children express when they sign that last document, that's priceless. I stole that from, MasterCard or whoever, but that makes all of it worth doing, honestly.
In my world, we call that a SWAN plan, sleep well at night plan.
Oh, yeah. I like that. I'm going to borrow that.
You may, because it is about sleeping well at night. And again, that has this ripple, I'm going to call it a ripple effect. I have a thing with words, a ripple effect of collateral goodness that happens, because if the parents are in relief, that special needs child isn't feeling that stress. It just literally goes on and on and on and on. So super.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, I think people don't realize how stressed you can feel and not realize it. I see that in my work, like how stressed out you are about things, and you don't realize how just solving one, not easy thing, but solving one thing can really ripple out, like you said, Rita. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've had a few moments like that in my life where something happened and I started crying. Like, what was that about? I didn't realize I was that stressed out.
Yeah. So Kirsten, are there any other resources out there that people can start with? You have a great website. I know you have a podcast. Are there any other resources we should know about?
I would say a couple of things. We've been talking about this, like, the parents have to save money, the parents have to plan. You've got to talk to a financial advisor. That's first and foremost, get in touch with the financial planner. And if you need access to somebody like that, I'm going to volunteer you, Jen. You know a ton of them. I know a ton of them. Call my
Rita's
office.
a fantastic one too. So
yeah, call my office. I can point you to a financial planner. The second one, this is something that I think very few people know about, but they're very, very important in this world, is some kind of a care manager. And there's a company that we've been working with, National Care Advisors, and they are national. It's a national company. They can help with all kinds of aspects of special needs planning. So one of the things, I was talking about earlier, the goal is for the parents to replace themselves. Parents often don't realize what that means. They don't appreciate how much work they put in and how expensive it would be to replace themselves. And so a care manager could do that assessment. Here's the 718 points that you take care of on a weekly basis. And here's how much it costs to hire somebody to do that. Okay, now let's go to your financial planner and make this happen. So I think those two resources are invaluable in the planning phase.
Yeah, because I can only imagine that naming somebody that would help caretake for a special needs child, it's already like when you're doing a regular trust and your kids, and you want to ask somebody else to do that. And it's so daunting because not everybody is prepared or capable of accepting such a big responsibility. It's even bigger with the special needs. So those are great resources. Wow.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. And special needs parents tend to think, oh, my other children will take care of that job. And, everybody here on this call is cringing like, no. So there are licensed professional fiduciaries who are excellent. There are some who specialize in special needs trusts, and they know what they're doing, and that's what they do for a living. You're not going to derail their lives by appointing them as a trustee. So I really encourage parents, if you've got parents listening out there, just think about, do you really want to do that to your other children?
That's a very good point.
Because there are professionals who can do it. So thanks
So
for bringing that up, Rita.
Lots of information. Really appreciate it. Lots of things that I think about in the back of my head. Do I do things correctly? That kind of thing. What's one fun fact about you?
Okay. Well, I think you know this, Jen, but I volunteer with the Salvation Army, and I'm on the advisory board for Alameda County. But my favorite part about being involved with Salvation Army is that during Christmas time, I get to stand outside a grocery store and ring the bell and get money in my red kettle. I love that. It's so much fun.
That's awesome.
I did know that about you.
I wear a goofy Santa hat and, the whole thing. It's just ridiculous. So
I get
look for me.
Cool pictures of Kirsten at the holidays with her Santa hat on and her red kettle that she has. So that's good. Well, thank you, Kirsten. Thank you so much for being here and talking through another heavy topic. Again, TMI also means we have to talk about things that no one else wants to talk about, because it's not always a fun topic. So,
and it's always inspiring though, because it is really like when we talk about heavy topics, the insight to me is always how profound the love is in it all.
And thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.